Hello students, in this session we are going to discuss about one of the important question which is expected in your annual examination, that is the structure of ovary. Structure of ovary, which is internal structure actually. So we can say that internal structure, or the diagram, draw neat labeled diagram of TS of ovary. So TS of ovary, in this way the question may be framed, so which is expected for 5 marks. So here, how to draw and what are the parts should label, let us we see. So it's as we know that the almond shape ovary, it is somewhat oval shape we can show. So make the outline like this. So I'll take here little more place to, yes. So you can go through the middle of the page. So you can show this oval shape, you can draw the structure outline. So here so this is the outer layer you should show, and this is the connective tissue which connects to the internal part of the abdominal cavity. So then we can show here, this is what the outer membrane, so which is called germinal epithelium. Germinal you can mention it as germinal epithelium. Right, so this is what the germinal epithelial cells. And next you can show there are two reasons what we observed, so I'll mention here. This is one first, that is germinal epithelium. Germinal epithelium, right? So this germinal epithelium is the layer of cells which are producing the follicular cells. So you can show here the follicular cells. This is what the follicular cells. So there are many follicular cells we observed in the cortex region of the ovary. There are two regions we can see. So this is what the cortex region, and this is the middle part of the ovary is called medulla, and outer part is called, that is cortex region. This I'll show it as cortex, and this is the medulla region. Medulla. So usually the reticular tissue, connective tissue we observed in the cortex. Here reticular connective tissue is found in the cortex region here. So this is what the cortex region, that is the cortex is made up of reticular connective tissue, and medulla is usually made up of areolar connective tissue. Areolar connective tissue, and with even blood vessels also there in this area. Both area, blood vessels and nerves are there, right? So now come to the point, the various stages of follicular developments we should show in this diagram. So here there are many number of follicular cells are there which are developed in the embryonic stage only, and these out of this one will get developed every month, and this is what the follicular cell which is developed here, that is called the grown follicular cell, is known as primary follicle. We call it as primary follicle. So this primary follicle further developed into the secondary follicle. The number of layers are become more here, and which is developed into a structure called is the secondary follicle, right? So this secondary follicle develops to form a structure called Graafian follicle or tertiary follicle. So we may refer it as tertiary follicle or Graafian follicle, which is completely matured follicle, we can say. So it can also shows the this. I'll show here the secondary oocyte, because of after meiosis first, so secondary oocyte is formed, and the secondary follicle may contain the primary oocyte here. This is called primary oocyte. So here this shows that the matured one shows that which is surrounded by the zona pellucida and membrane. There are again multi layers are there. So it is found in the cavity called antrum. This we can show it as antrum here, and further there are membranes are there. Yes, we can observe here the membranes. These membranes are named as externally. Yes, so this is what the structure. The cavity is called antrum. The cavity which is called antrum, and so usually this the secondary oocyte, what we called the central cell, this is called the secondary oocyte, which is actually haploid in their chromosomal number. Haploid set of chromosome will be there because it is formed after meiosis first. So primary oocyte is divided by meiosis first and produce the secondary oocyte, right? So here this antrum is filled with a fluid called the liquor folliculi. So no need to mention here because we are concentrating here the for structure of ovary, and in Graafian follicle that details we can study. No need to label all these parts. Just for information we should know this is not space. The antrum is the cavity which is filled with the liquor folliculi which is secreted by the follicular cells. So these are surrounded by follicular cells, right? So next, so this will get, when it is matured, the matured follicle is called, this is what we call Graafian follicle. Now Graafian Graphian follicle. So matured follicle or tertiary follicle is called Graphian follicle. So it's the name of scientist who uh, proposed it or discovered it. So that is the Graphian follicle. The name is given to the matured follicle, right? Or also called tertiary follicle or matured follicle, right? So later on, at the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, so this is also get ruptured, and so which is, I'll show here this structure like this. So there is a, yes, this is what the follicular cells remains in the ovary, and this matured follicle come to the surface of the ovary, and the wall is get ruptured here like this, and this secondary oocyte which is there inside, that will come outside here now, and that is with some follicular cells which is called zona pellucida. So this is the, we mentioned it as the secondary oocyte. When it was released, actually it is a secondary oocyte. Later on it go for the meiosis 2 and produce the egg cell, but even sometimes we refer it as a egg, the release of egg at the time ovulation, we can say ovulation. This phenomenon is called ovulation, which is released from the ovary. No, the egg is released, we mentioned, but exactly this was in the stage that is secondary oocyte stage, not the matured egg, right? So at the time of fertilization only, it is divided by meiosis 2 and produce the ova or egg, right? So that explanation is not necessary, but we should know this one. For remedial students, how to draw the diagram is very important, and label the parts. So after release of this egg, so this remnant part of the this secondary oocyte or Graphian follicle, secondary oocyte is released out. This is called the ovulation. And next, the Graphian follicle remaining parts, these are the layers, the membrana, granules, and every these layers are remains converted into a structure called, that is the structure, this structure is referred as the corpus hemorrhagia. We call it as corpus hemorrhagia. Corpus hemorrhagica. Corpus hemorrhagica, we can say. This corpus hemorrhagica because some amount of blood is released here. Very small amount of blood is released due to the rupture of this follicular cells, because of blood vessels will get ruptured. So that's what we call it as the corpus hemorrhagica. And later on, if fertilization occurs, this corpus hemorrhagica developed into a structure called, there is a structure called, this structure is known as, yes, this is called corpus luteum. Corpus, yes, corpus luteum. This corpus luteum functions if fertilization occurs, so otherwise it will be disappears or degenerates. So if fertilization occurs, if fertilization fertilization sorry this yes, if fertilization occurs, so this works like a temporary endocrine gland. Temporary endocrine gland and release the hormone called progesterone. The progesterone hormone is called pregnancy hormone, which is released by this corpus luteum. So if fertilization occurs, if fertilization does not occur, so this is converted into a structure called, this structure is disappears finally. So that structure is called corpus albinicus. Corpus albinicus. Yes, it is corpus albinicus. Corpus albinicus. So this structure is degenerated and disappears if fertilization not occurs. If fertilization not occurs. So but only, and even also you can show the blood vessels here. So this is what the blood vessels you can show. So like this you can show the blood vessels in the medullary region, and even blood capillaries are there, right? So there is, as you know, connective tissue, as I mentioned. These are the blood vessels which supply the blood. So these are the enough parts to label this one. See here, the first germinal epithelium, primary follicle, secondary follicle, and the primary follicle has the primary oocyte. Sorry, secondary follicle has primary oocyte here. Even it is also called primary oocyte only. So after meiosis first, what happens? There is a secondary oocyte is takes place. So that is due to reductional division. This one is diploid and this one is become haploid later on. Here no need to explain everything. So only if TS of ovary they asked, you can draw it like this only. Okay. So every month one follicle is get developed into a primary follicle, and later on it's developed into a secondary follicle. Tertiary follicle is called a Graafian follicle. This one, Graafian follicle. You can label all these, the parts were very important. Graafian follicle, later on which is released out on 14th day of the menstrual cycle, that is secondary oocyte. Then if fertilization occurs, it is become corpus luteum. So at the time of released structure, this one corpus hemorrhagia, because blood is released here. So next the corpus luteum is formed. If fertilization does not occur, that is become corpus albinicus and disintegrated, disappeared. So in the next month, after next month, one more egg will be developed in another ovary. So this is what the TS of ovary, which shows the various developing stages of the follicle. Yes, try to practice this diagram because it's very important for 5 marks, right? So practice this one. Thank you, students.